it's a massive, massive opportunity for the industry. And it's a massive opportunity for our country, because when you think about 73% of the population being overweight or obese, and 42% of that is obese, right? 42% expected to go to 50. You've got costs, medical costs associated that are significant and can be reduced.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Our guest today is one of the fitness industry's most forward-thinking leaders, whose focus on progression and innovation has been instrumental in shaping the fitness industry as we know it. For more than 20 years, our guest stood at the helm of Precor and transformed the company from a single product entity into a multi-product global brand. Today, our guest is a partner at Harrison & Co., a consumer-focused investment bank helping clients make the right strategic business decisions to capitalize on the rapidly changing consumer economy. Recently, the company released a report exploring the impact and opportunities of GLP-1s for the fitness and wellness industry.
The thing that'll play out over time, does the improved health of losing weight via GLP-1s lower medical costs in the long run? That's really the equation. You were twice as much more likely to want to work out if you were on GLP-1s than if you weren't. This is not an equal opportunity thing. The GLP-1s, for the most part, are going to benefit people of higher socioeconomic status, at least in the short term. I think with GLP-1s, it's a pipe dream to think you're going to lose mostly fat just because it's so rapid. I mean, you are going to lose lean mass, even if you eat protein, even if you lift weights.
So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Paul Byrne to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast.
Mr. Paul Byrne, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Matthew, good to see you.
We're in sunny Newport Beach.
Beautiful, just like Seattle.
When was it that we were in the other room? How many years ago was that?
About a year, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, I think maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like quite a while.
Yeah.
We had a good conversation then, and we're back today. You've done a resource exploring the impacts and the opportunities for the GLP-1 drug for the fitness and wellness industry.
Yes.
So what sort of gave you the idea to do that, Paul?
Just reading the news and keeping up on things and reading about GLP-1s and connecting the dots. It wasn't that difficult to do that. I mean, here's a drug that when taken, you lose a lot of weight rapidly, and it gets you on the path to health. And I thought this could have impact on our industry, right? I mean, it's beyond just taking a shot. I'm obese, I'm going to lose weight, end of story. It's when you take GLP-1s, there's a necessity to work out, right? So when you actually are prescribed it, they tell you this is to be done in conjunction with diet and exercise. So I thought, so here you have a lot of obese people, like obese and overweight represent 73% of the population. If just a small percentage of those go on GLP-1s and maybe even smaller percentage go into gyms, it's potentially has massive impact on the industry.
They've always been saying that in the industry. Oh, we're going to wait until there's a pill you can take, thinking it was a crazy dream, and now here it is.
Yeah, and of course there was always a fear there that this would be a replacement thing, like there's a pill and all of a sudden nobody goes to the gym. And I think that fear is still out there because I've gotten response from the report. Some of it very positive, some of it you're out of your mind, they're not going to come to the gym. This is a terrible thing. But in actuality, I think it's a really positive thing. And you're seeing it, right? You're seeing certain companies embrace it, and some of the ones you would likely see, like Lifetime, right? That's part of Lifetime's brand. They're on the cutting edge of things. But they've developed a whole program around GLP-1s, complete with doctors and nurses, et cetera. And that'll trickle down, I think, eventually. But I think it's a massive, massive opportunity for the industry. And it's a massive opportunity for our country. Because when you think about 73% of the population being overweight or obese, and 42% of that is obese, right? 42% expected to go to 50. You've got costs, medical costs associated that are significant and can be reduced.
In the US, I was reading yesterday that it's $173 billion, UK £6 billion.
Cost.
Yeah.
Medical costs.
For people that are obese, which
That's
is
right.
Amazing.
Not insignificant.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So I think a good place to start then is for the layman. There's a lot of talk around this, and there's a lot of different brand names associated to it. Maybe start by saying, look, what is GLP-1? What are some of the brand names out there? And you know, what do we know that it actually does for people? Maybe start with that.
Well, GLP-1s, first of all, sort of mimic a hormone that regulates appetite, right? And so basically what they do is make you feel full, period. And so you don't eat. Therefore, you lose weight. I mean, they were developed initially for diabetes because they also lower A1C, they lower blood glucose, which is a really good thing. And they discovered kind of after the fact, kind of a la how Viagra was discovered, that, wow, people lose weight with these. And so the focus went from being a diabetes drug, which is what Ozempic is, to a weight loss drug, but it was really an after effect. And now what's happened is the industry that's exploding is the weight loss side of things. So yeah, so that's how they work. There are some side effects, right? You typically can get nausea, gastrointestinal kinds of issues. Some people don't have any side effects, but there are side effects. And then the other big issue for people is just cost. You know, if the insurance doesn't cover it, you're talking about $1,000 a month, which obviously not insignificant.
In the UK, I understand that it is being covered on, if you're obese, it's being covered on the NHS. Do you know anything about that at all?
Not about what's happening in the UK, but of course they have a little bit more latitude because it's one central body, so they can approve it or not approve it. So it's approved, fantastic. You know, UK can go after weight loss or obesity as an issue in the UK. In the US, it's down to each insurance company or each country, so it's a lot more fragmented. Now, if it's not approved by Medicare yet, but if it gets approved by Medicare or Medicaid, I think you'll see an acceleration of others kind of capitulating and covering it. The thing that'll play out over time, does the improved health of losing weight via GLP-1s lower medical costs in the long run? That's really the equation. If it just makes you look better, but you're going to pay as much or the government's going to pay as much in giving people shots as they were paying downstream to keep them alive when they got sick, then does it really make sense to make that investment?
I got hold of a report just last week, actually. It's a fairly new one that was Novorsk, is it Novorsk? What are they called?
Novo Nordisk.
Novo Nordisk, yeah. They done a report, and it was for people that didn't have diabetes, weren't obese, and it was it was kind of like this longevity study to see their chances of death. And apparently that, compared to the placebo, actually said that there's you've got a less chance of dying through different diseases with this than if you don't have it. So it seems as though, and I guess a lot of disease that originate from people being overweight anyway, but it seems as though it's kind of helps you lose weight, helps you look better, helps you live longer. You know, it's
well, there were a lot of unanticipated benefits to this. Like, you know, one of them is improved cardiovascular health, less cravings right. for alcohol and other things, which are completely unanticipated, right? So I haven't heard any major downside, just more upsides. Now, anytime a drug company does a quote study, just take it with a grain of salt. It's probably not the most scientifically based study. No. Is it a double blind? I mean, I haven't read the study at all to know that. But at least anecdotally, there are enough things out there to say this has a lot of side benefits beyond weight loss or diabetes control.
Well, I heard it's a very valuable company. The Novo Nordisk, I saw the size of that, and
I think it's the most valuable company in the world now. I think.
Yeah, way more than even all these COVID drug companies like the Pfizers and everything out there, which is quite amazing. But I also saw that the percentage or the amount of people, it was in the low millions that are actually on it at the moment. So when you sort of looked at how many people are taking it and the potential market size, it was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. But based on what you know, how do people get it at the moment? What's the sort of distribution method? Because I guess you go to your doctor if you're obese and that's prescribed. But outside of that, I hear that a lot of this has been driven by celebrities taking it, going to some of these clinics. So how have up until recently have people been getting hold of it that are not obese?
Yeah, well, so there are companies doing it already. Weight Watchers bought a company called Sequence, I think about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. than a year ago. And this is what Sequence does. You go in, I think it's all online. You see a doctor, quote, online. It gets prescribed online. They tell you what to do after, diet, exercise, et cetera. But they themselves don't deliver, I don't think, any of those services. There's RO, R-O, that also online will prescribe it. Then beyond that, you would go to see your local doctor, endocrinologist, weight loss specialist for it.
Right. And I guess if we start with some of the problems, like we're from the health and fitness industry, and you've worked with Precor. For those of you who don't know, you were the president of Precor for many years,
Yes.
and a lot of the people in the world that you've been around with is working with people that have some kind of gyms, and
Right.
generally that's the place where people have gone to lose weight and to get in shape. So what do you think is going to be the impact initially? And we'll start with the sort of bad news, and then we can go on to the opportunities second. But what could be some of the impact for gyms and gym services for people that were traditionally going there to lose weight?
Now, we say impact from an operational point of view or
Well, both, I
revenue
guess
point of view?
financially,
or both?
ultimately,
Yeah, revenue point of view, yeah. I mean, so we point out in the study that total addressable market, if you take just 5%, you figure 5% of the people that are obese or overweight, so that's 73% of the population, just take 5% of those, go on a GLP-1, that would represent a total addressable market increase of like 6.7 billion. You just take those numbers and multiply it by a one-year health club membership. It comes out to 6.7 billion. Now, are all those people going to join a health club? Of course not. But it is a significant number that should join a health club because if 5% of the population goes on it, then they're supposed to work out. They've got to do it somewhere. I think the big barrier for a club is they're not really set up for the most part to deal with somebody who's probably never been to a gym or hasn't been to gyms for a long time. Their body is, hey, it's obese, right? So do you want to walk into a place where a lot of people are fit? It's very, very intimidating. And I think intimidation is the biggest barrier right now, for sure. So how do you, as a club owner, how do I get around it? How do I make people feel comfortable coming in? Do I have a separate entrance, or do I have a separate area or a separate time? Some way to make them feel better. And I think that's going to play out over time. I think initially it's going to be the early adopters. I mean, we already see this, right? Sequence, Row, Lifetime. I think you'll see more and more of this. But for the sort of mainstream club owner, I think it's going to be a few years before there's significant adoption.
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalog is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today, or be one of the lucky few to receive a hardbound printed copy straight to your door. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now.
What about the impact on the gym business of people deciding they don't need to go anymore? Like, we're coming into January, everyone's like, okay, let's sign up, lose weight, get into the gym, etc. And I'll come on to some of the other industries in a moment. But do you think that this could, in the short term, get people to say, well, I don't need to go to a gym. I'm gonna do it. Like, I know someone that's on it. I know a few people that are on it, actually. One person that needs to be on it, one person that doesn't. He just thinks,
well, we are in California.
It just thinks it makes him look better. But,
exactly.
But doesn't exercise either. So can you see people saying, well, look, I've got the perfect bod now. Why do I need to go to the gym?
Well, yes, but the thing is, you don't have the perfect bod now, right? Because the more weight you lost, the more likely you're probably got skin just kind of hanging out, looking for that fat that used to be there to cling on to, right? So you really do have to work out. And there's one thing we point out in the paper, that there's this motivational aspect to GLP-1s, and which is you lose weight so rapidly that your motivation changes, like from what we call extrinsic to intrinsic, right? So the extrinsic is I'm overweight. My doctor tells me I need to lose weight. You know, I can go on a 14-day challenge or all this, but all these motivating factors are external from my sort of persona. But when I want it, when I believe in it, when I'm completely bought in, that's intrinsic. And what tends to happen with GLP-1s, you see results so quickly that people get motivated. Like, wow, you know, instead of going on a regular diet where you diet for, you know, you're into it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You look at the scale like, shit, I haven't lost that much weight. I don't look that different. And you've probably been working out, and you probably have better body comp measurements that you haven't been tracking, but your
energy levels probably as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the key is this intrinsic motivation blips you into wanting to work out. And one of the studies that I pointed out in the paper, that I forget what the exact percentage was, but it was like you were twice as much more likely to want to work out if you were on GLP-1s than if you weren't.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you don't think that there's going to be an impact on the fitness industry with this coming in, with people just even until they're educated about the fact that they need to go to the gym? You don't think there's any serious concern to the industry of this maybe getting people to think they don't need to go in there?
You know, I don't think it should be a serious concern, because you've got this huge group of people that are going to be on it, right? And then I think if I hear your question correctly, you're talking about people that maybe aren't overweight or certainly obese, that are in clubs but want to lose a little weight, and maybe they take it and leave. So what's that flow look like? I mean, how many come in from being overweight or obese to joining the club because they know they have to and they're intrinsically motivated and blah, 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 to the ones that were going to gym just because they were so vain that they had to, and now they have something they can inject themselves once a week and they can leave. You know, what's the net inflow and outflow?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but it seems to me that net,
right,
it's a positive.
I think the bit that you said in your report, and I've heard similar examples of that people's motivation changes. I was chatting to James from One Rebel about his clubs and the fact that a lot of people feel as though they need to go to a gym before they come to his gym because they need to look a certain way.
Yeah.
So I suppose if people are doing that and then they're getting into this healthy lifestyle, they're not probably wanting to drink as much, eat as much, smoke as much, etc. And then you could kind of see where that would almost like create a little bit of a funnel into some of these places.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
But America would not be having nearly as much fun if people don't drink as much and smoke as much. See, so there is a downside.
Well, let's talk about that now, because I've been reading the impact on other really unrelated industries that seem to be quite significant, and people are already thinking about how to, price this into some of the future predictions of businesses that could be really devastated with people not snacking and things like that. So what things have quite sort of shocking to you in terms of how this is going to impact other industries in the food and drink side?
Well, I don't know if they're shocking or not. You could probably predict some of the stuff as you look downstream of GLP-1s and behavior. People are going to exercise more, yes, but as you point out, they're going to eat less, they're going to snack less. So that's going to impact all of those industries. And I know for a fact these are discussions going on in boardrooms right now. Big discussion in Wall Street, right? You've seen different food companies take a big hit in their stock price because of this, because people are going to be snacking less. So that's a real issue. I think you'll see them respond with healthier snacks, high in protein, because one of the big issues here, right, is protein loss, lean body loss. So they'll probably change some of the formula, make it easier for GL1 patients to ingest protein concentrated products, right? So they're not just going to sit there and take it. I think they'll adapt to the market.
Mm. Do you see some of the big ones like your McDonald's and some of your sort of like snacks, biscuits, those kind of companies? Are there any that you've heard that are being talked about?
No, I don't think any of them have done anything yet. I know that companies like Kroger, they've talked about it at the board level. What to do about that. And Kroger, of course, are supermarkets. So what do they sell? What do they carry? How does it impact their business? But net, if people are eating less, they're eating less, and it is going to impact total consumption. I mean, there's no question. I guess the question there is, so so people are eating fewer snacks that aren't good for you. That's probably a good thing. So does it impact businesses in the short term? Yes. But is it healthy for the consumer and ultimately for the company in terms of what they sell and what they do? Does it impact them positively? And I think it does.
Because some of those companies that are likely to be affected are some of the huge companies, aren't they? Some of the biggest companies in the United States, as an example, like these sort of junk food that we eat a lot of.
Yeah, well, you asked about McDonald's, so I don't know what happens with McDonald's, but my concern would be that with GLP-1s, they're so expensive right now that where they're going to be made available is to people that can afford them, either can write the check for them or they have the insurance to cover them. And so right out of the gate, there's kind of a lack of equality, if that's the right word, but lack of opportunity there. So I can see people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged not being helped at all.
And that's from what I understand that, I don't know for definite, but from what I understand that that there is a correlation related to kind of where you are on that scale and obesity.
There is, and that's a much deeper problem, right? So it's not only they eat garbage, right? They eat McDonald's and all these empty calories. Why? Because it's a cheaper meal. Like per calorie, it's cheaper. So that's the name of that tune. Beyond that, there aren't opportunities for exercise. I mean, if you go to a lot of socioeconomically disadvantaged places, they don't have any gym in the schools. The kids, the playgrounds are unsafe. You can't get out and exercise. So there's a lot more to it than just eating at McDonald's, and so it's a lot bigger problem. So it's a discussion for another day, in a way. But I think it's good to point out that this is not an equal opportunity thing. The GLP-1s, for the most part, are going to benefit people of higher socioeconomic status, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I think in the short term, Rod. In the medium term, when I was chatting to somebody about this a little while ago, they said that one of the challenges with drugs is that in order to get them through the various different stages and get them onto the market, it takes quite a long time. I don't know the exact period of time they mentioned, but with the patents on the drugs being relatively short compared to the amount of time it takes to get them on the market. So by the time the product's on the market, you've already burnt through half of your time to protect them. So my guess, and we're already seeing it, is there's going to become a number of different versions of these relatively quickly that come on, may or may not be quite as effective, but I'd have thought that that's likely to happen. Like, what are your thoughts, and have you even considered that?
Yeah, I think it's likely to happen. It will happen because eventually the patents will run out and generic versions will be available, and then the semaglutides will become available to the less advantaged, for sure. But now you can actually go to a compounding pharmacy and do a version of a GLP-1. Oh yeah.
So that's your next venture, is it?
No, I don't have any enough years left on the calendar, but yeah, you can do that now. Okay. Actually, yeah.
Interesting.
But that is the key to getting price down.
Right. The weight loss industry, I didn't realize how big that was. I was looking at this last night, and apparently it's a 270 billion global industry that's growing 10% per annum. I reckon by 2028 it's going to be worth 432 billion. Includes things like meals, drinks, supplements, etc. What do you think it's going to do to that? Because I guess there's a lot of money in weight loss supplements, drinks, programs, and everything. Do you think that is going to be effective? Because those are generally things that you take or do passively with the view of getting into the shape you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my opinion. I haven't dug in there, but my initial take is it's going to negatively impact the P&L, because I mean, what they're selling is weight loss almost strictly through food. I mean, it depends on who you're looking at, but for most, it's food and drink and something. That's
Shakes
it. Shakes and
yeah.
that's it, and you lose weight. So if you have the option to spend a lot of money on shakes and all this other stuff versus take a GLP-1, not be very hungry at all, get a couple of protein bars each day and go to the gym, you'll probably do the latter instead of the former. So I think the impact is potentially pretty negative depending on what exactly the program is. But if it's all food versus something that constrains significantly your desire for food, it's not good for those companies.
So that's not a long-term investment to be putting anything.
No, sell.
Sell. And what about home fitness? So that's been through a bit of a tough time recently. I suppose, what's the motivation to buy fitness equipment? I know if you look at infomercials, it's always about, lose weight, get a six pack. It seems to be heavily body shape related.
Yeah.
Do you think that and that's 11.6 billion globally as of 2022, I believe. Do you think that's going to take a bit of a hit because of this?
I think if anything, it would be positive, because if we go back to the whole intimidation factor associated with it, probably a lot easier to do this in your home. Right? You shouldn't be theoretically intimidated in your home. So there's the opportunity for somebody doing, say, maybe an app-based kind of a program, because this isn't that complicated, right? I mean, there are certain companies, hiring doctors and nurses and all that, and that's great for the screening part. But it comes down to what you need to do, and basically you need to eat a high-protein diet, which sounds easier than it is because you're not very hungry. So actually, ingesting enough protein to take care of the protein you're losing by calorie restriction might actually be difficult to do that. So you're going to lose lean body mass. What's the other antidote to lean body mass? It's strength training, right? But that doesn't have to be that complicated, right? You could get a Smith machine or a multi-station kind of machine and just do the basic core exercise that could be put into an app-based program easily. And people working out from years of obesity are different in the sense they haven't worked out, right? So they have to start at very low weights and do increments slowly and all that. But the body responds the same for them as it does for a fit person, right? So I could see the home industry actually benefiting from this. I could see, apps. I mean, I think Row has an app, and I think Sequence, I'm not sure if they do, but they're going to be out there for sure. So at-home remedy may end up being the thing that people choose more often than anything else.
Yeah, as we talk, I'm starting to think of things differently to what I did when I was preparing for this. But I can certainly see the two interesting shifts here with the gyms. You mentioned this intimidation factor, and it's something that we've been looking at, not with obese people, but people that are just generally a bit overweight. Right. Going into the traditional gym where they've been told they need to do strength training, but in the strength training area, as you know, it's generally mirrors, dumbbells, benches. So unless you're pretty hot looking and confident about going in that area, if you are overweight and not proud of how you look, it's probably very intimidating to even get into that kind of space, isn't it? And a lot of conversations we've been having is about creating a gym space that does meet the needs for some of the newer people that are coming in since the pandemic. I guess when you take it to obese people, that's a totally different level all again, isn't it? And one is I suppose how do people that are reasonably fit feel about being in a gym like that, because that's definitely going to be a consideration. And then how do people like that, size of equipment, seating, there's probably like everything from an equipment design to gym layouts that would be able to accommodate that type of person. So as you said, doing it at home until to people get to a certain stage may be an interesting kind of link into to going
Yeah.
into a physical space.
Yeah. In a gym space, as long as you have someplace else to go, whether it's a former racquetball court or whatever, but their own space. I mean, when I'm down here visiting, I belong to a HVLP, which will go unnamed, but they have like a back porch kind of a thing where people go, and there are multi-stations there, but it's semi-private. And I wander back there every time I'm here just to see who's there, and it tends to be people that are more overweight, tends to skew female. I mean, this is hardly a scientific study, but these are my observations. So there's a way to accommodate, but in general, like you walk into an HVLP1, I mean, right off the bat, it's intimidating. Like it's this wide open space, lots of strength, lots of freeways, lots of guys walking around grunting and this kind of thing. If I haven't worked out my entire life and I'm 300 pounds, you're probably saying right away, this isn't for me. So maybe, the answer is there are solutions at every stage, right? So if you're just getting into GLP-1s, maybe it is at home or a sequence or a lifetime or one of those until you reach the next stage where you feel more comfortable and you know what exercises you need to do. And so you can walk into any place and replicate what you've learned. That would be my guess is how things would progress. But, right off the bat to go into some of these big box places, probably not it, but there are smaller gyms that can certainly accommodate these people comfortably.
Do you think it will drive things like equipment design? That's part of your space.
Yes, it is. Well, it depends on what you're talking. If you're talking about single station machines, for sure, right? If somebody's 400 pounds, you're going to have a hard time fitting into that bench press machine. But I think these people can be accommodated with some of the current open design, two-stack designs, those kinds of things, where you can do almost everything you need to do from a standing position, and it's open. I'd look at too, weight increments, right? So now you have 10-pound increments. For these people, you're probably starting off maybe for some exercise at 2.5. or 5, and maybe those increments should be 2.5 or 5 pound increments instead of 10. Now, some machines already kind of accommodate those capabilities, but that'd be the other thing I would look at.
Let's talk about the opportunities now. So you mentioned that one of the things that comes with this GLP is the loss of muscle mass.
Right.
Where, if you were in business, owning a gym or whatever, like what are some of the things that you'd be thinking about as complementary, and if you wanted to get ahead of the curve with this, like what do you think about about that particular problem?
Well, I think body comp is a big part of this, right? So yes, you're going to lose lean mass, but like how much and what's good? So I think starting with a baseline is very important. Somebody comes in, you do an assessment, you do a complete assessment, and one of those would be body comp. You probably want to do a movement assessment, flexibility, that. But the body comp one's important because you establish the baseline for them. Like here's where you are now. This is sort of ideal, and I think in the report I've got a graph there that shows what ideal percentages of muscle, bone, water, et cetera are. But here's idea, and we'll track that over time, because a lot of times you don't see quite the results you thought you were going to see, but then you get on and look at body comp, and it tells a different story. That you're actually losing mostly fat, which is what the objective here is. Now, I think with GLP-1s, it's a pipe dream to think you're going to lose mostly fat just because it's so rapid. I mean, you are going to lose lean mass, even if you eat protein, even if you lift weights, but you want to mitigate that with training. So that would be the function of doing lean body assessment. So I think that would be probably the most important thing to do up front.
And then combine that with specific programs and
right.
Did you say?
Yeah. So I've been exchanging emails with Cedric Bryant. Cedric is the president of ACE, American Council on Exercise, and they're actually doing position statements on this now and such. But personally, I think that ACE and bodies like that should have like a continuing education or certification program around this specifically, GLP-1 patients, had a program for them, had to track them, all of that. I think it's very, very important that the industry embrace this.
And because I haven't heard, that was another thing I was going to talk about, some of these, the educational requirements, type of education trainers. Like, do you know of anything that's currently out there specifically to deal with this population?
On a certification point of view, no. I expect it's coming, particularly from an ACE. It may be more of a, like I say, a continuing education thing, because again, it's not that complicated. I mean, we already know how the body responds to exercise and the importance of that and the importance of it during any weight loss program. So you kind of have that already. What we don't have is anybody that's ever lost this amount of weight that rapidly.
That's what I mean. I'm wondering if there's some things that we probably need to be aware of or careful of, like when that happens. What is going on inside the body? Is it all just positive and you don't really need to worry about it? Or any kind of any sort of other stresses that's happening to it, where you have to be kind of mindful of the type of exercise that or the speed of the, because it's not. I guess it's not natural for that to happen that quickly, is it?
Right. And if you're basically on a starvation diet, I mean, right? I mean, you are. So I can see one of the potential issues being working out too hard, too early, maybe particularly on the cardio side, believe it or not, versus the strength side, where you're getting your heart rate up, you're in your past zone 2, and you haven't done this for a while. I can see maybe you get lightheaded, right? You don't have the energy stores. So that could be a risk. I actually have heard stories of GLP-1 patients fainting now in the gym. Now that's uncorroborated, but I have heard that. So yes, I think that could be an issue, and that's why you probably the core of a program would be to start very slowly and in small increments and work up to it, and all the while maybe monitoring, the body's response. Particularly, maybe they wear a heart rate watch and just track and keep people at low heart rates, zone 2 max, early on in the program.
Coming up next.
Longevity is kind of a big buzzword right now, but I think longevity is like an umbrella for all this stuff. I think the industry's transitioned in a way to a, lack of a better word, healthier place. Instead of just looking good or just losing weight, they should be bringing gyms back into the gym class, back into the school. We should be teaching kids what I call the joy of movement.
Any other markets that are getting involved in this internationally?
Well, I've got to believe that most affluent, at least, countries, GLP-1s are on the radar. And if they have an obesity crisis, which almost every major country does, that yes, they'll embrace it at some level. There are no GLP-1s that are tablet form that are approved for weight loss yet.
Do you think that there's an opportunity for like specialist programs, personal training, and things that, so rather than just going to the gym and figuring it out, like the opportunity for, let's say you're a trainer, is this a great opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm going to go and really understand this. I'm going to become a specialist in patients taking GLP-1 in order to kind of get this more of a holistic approach to their health and wellness and be able to, make that into a really interesting business.
Absolutely. Yep.
Just needs the education.
Yeah, it just needs the education. But you're already there. If you're a trainer, you've got the very basic education. So getting educated around GLP-1s wouldn't take that long. And what most patients want is they want to be shown what to do, and they want somebody either literally or figuratively hold their hand through the process, especially early on, because like I said, it's intimidating. You're embarking on this new you. It's a completely new journey. And you don't want to go it alone. You want to go it with some good guidance.
The advice on diet and protein, that's another thing that I don't think is that commonly understood, and probably not too much in the way of solutions out there on that either. You mentioned the need for eating protein. how much? What do you do if the fact that you're not eating a lot and you want to exercise? Are you getting all your basic nutrients in other areas, or have you still got a bad diet but you're not eating as much? And how does that? So that advice on diet, basic nutrition, supplementation seems as though there could be a need to provide some good advice on that as well, would you think?
Yeah, for sure. Now, I don't know how different that would be. I think the protein component is probably you want to eat more than you normally would be eating in just basic protein turnover. From what I've read, that it is hard to eat enough protein to compensate for the loss in protein over rapid weight loss.
It seems as though it's difficult to eat enough protein for anyone, because I think we're all, I interviewed Gabrielle Leon, and she always says, look, most of us are not eating enough protein, even if you're relatively healthy.
Well, it's a lot of protein. I think it's like 0.6 times your weight in kilograms. And, if you do the math there, that's a lot of protein. Yeah.
Particularly as you get older, it becomes quite important when you're sort of our age to maintain that.
I'm your father's age, I think. But we let that secret out.
As you get a bit older, then.
Yeah, that's right. There we go.
And if you're not tempted to eat, then maybe there's some sort of risks of not doing that and being able to provide someone and hold their hand and provide protein and maybe even supplements potentially.
Yeah, well, if you don't eat enough, you get into potential sort of wasting disease. It's called, and this could be catastrophic, right? If you lose too much weight, because if you don't have enough protein, then the body, hormone regulation is upset. Your metabolism can be impacted because, look, the muscles house the mitochondria, right? You don't have, there's the quote, energy stores, right? And the energy. What's the right word I'm looking for? The energy engine of the muscle. Fewer muscle, fewer mitochondria, right? And that determines your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. So then your BMR goes down. If you go off GLP-1s and start eating more, your basal metabolic rate just drops. You put the weight back on more rapidly. So managing this whole process is critical. It's not just taking the GLP-1s, but it's making sure you keep that protein, that lean body up to keep your overall metabolic health. Otherwise, the whole thing deteriorates.
I did hear that once you stop it, you're back up again. So it seems as though it's one of these drugs that you kind of pretty much take forever. Is that have
probably?
You heard that?
Yeah, probably. Now, will you have to maintain those doses? I don't know that, because early on you're looking to lose weight, so you're constricting or impacting you're impacting the appetite to a major degree to lose that weight. But once that's over, once you've reached that target weight, you can probably get by with lower doses and just maintain that body weight.
Yeah, I did hear that you have to increase it as well for a period of time, maybe until you get to that weight.
You do that initially,
right?
So you have like a sensitizing dose, and then they step that up. My guess is they do that to minimize as best they can the side effects. Yeah, because that'd be my guess. But that is the way they're prescribed.
When I talk to a lot of trainers that work with people to lose weight, in most cases it comes to them working on the psychological side.
Right.
That's where it all generally starts. So what do you see there being need or opportunities on the behavioral mindset, lifestyle coaching in conjunction with this? Because I guess there'll be a positive side of losing weight, but then there's the kind of psychological reasons of why they're in that place in the first place, and how they kind of get that balance so it doesn't turn into another kind of addiction somewhere.
Yeah. Well, theoretically, as I stated before, based on the way GLPs work with this rapid weight loss, where you click right into intrinsic motivation, and you're very excited about the new you and maintaining the new you, the likelihood of long-term behavioral change goes up. And that's been demonstrated. So I would think it would be beneficial for these coaches. Now, do these coaches need to be counseling GLP-1 patients? Probably, because if I'm a GLP-1 patient, I get a behavioral lifestyle coach, I'm more likely to optimize the opportunity, right? And make these long-term changes. So yeah, I think there's definitely a role. And I think a behavioral coach become just more successful with patients under GLP-1s than without.
You work with a lot of companies in the health, wellness, fitness, nutrition business. Is there any interesting new product development ideas, whether that's in equipment, food, supplements, that you can see that potential investments or development things that people could start to think about that would complement what's this big movement that's happening with GLP-1?
Are you looking for ideas?
Yeah. And anyone that's listening, I'm sure that hopefully they come here to sort of get a bit inspired.
Well, I could talk about sort of overall themes. I think that, longevity is kind of a big buzzword right now, but I think longevity is like an umbrella for all this stuff. I think the industry's transitioned in a way to a, lack of a better word, healthier place. Instead of just looking good or just losing weight, I think you have people like Huberman and Peter Attia that are talking about the holistic picture of health and well-being and living a good life through every phase of your life. And what are the components of that? What are the things you have to do? So if I were looking at it now to start a new company, I'd be looking at these high-level themes and how are those being met right now. I don't have any specific ideas around that, but I really believe that that's what's going on. And you can see now, like for my group, like the baby boomers, normally they would be sort of ignored at this point. You're on the backside of the curve. Hey, just go for a walk for a mile every day, and you're good to go, and we'll get you a box when it comes time. But then you look at what Huberman and Attia brought to this whole new mindset of what's important for living a long life, right down to things like grip strength and what does that need to look like, and how do I improve my balance? How do I mitigate the risk of falling? I mean, all these things that never were talked about a generation ago. So I have always looked at these things that they're demographically driven, and breaking it down into segments, and what do those segments want, and how do you deliver on that, and what are the high level forces that are impacting that. And I think it's a different answer almost for every one of those big segments, Z, millennial, baby boom.
It's interesting that you say that, because a few years ago, we were talking a lot. David Minton used to say about this. The fitness industry is missing a big opportunity with the Gen X's, which is me, and the boomers. Why is there nothing there for those people?
Yeah, Gen Xers are kind of the forgotten generation.
And then when you, as you say now, if you look at some of the, like, I guess Rogan kind of falls into the Xer, right, and Huberman, as you said, is addressing some of the needs for these boomers. You're kind of seeing this demographic now that obviously want to live longer, look better. They want to almost like perform as they did when they were in their 30s. There seems to be a lot more awareness of, these people are there. There's specific needs to address them. It seems as though it's quite an affluent demographic.
Right.
Kids have grown up in a lot of cases to these people. They've got, they're either retired, like you have in some cases, or they don't, empty nesters. So there does seem to be a bigger opportunity there that people are starting to talk about a little bit more. Do you see that still as those? Let's just say those two demographics. Do you still see that as fairly, a lot of white space still in that area for different concepts in the health and wellness space to be developed, or is it just that I'm not recognizing a lot that's out there?
Well, I think it boils down to, regardless of the generation, people have the question, like, what do I do? Here's what I want to get. Let's say I want to live longer, and maybe they define it even more specifically. I want to live longer, and I want to be able to ski as long as I can ski. I want to golf as long as I can golf. I mean, whatever those things are. And then, like, what do I do? And that question is answered, for the most part, I think, uniformly across the generations, where it probably shouldn't be, right? And so I think what's happened in the industry, and this is a positive thing, over time, that's the role sort of boutiques took in a way. And this, of course, much more for the probably millennial generation and now Z. But the clubs weren't really meeting that because they had specific needs. They wanted a more social environment. They wanted it time stamped. You know, I don't want to do more than 20 minutes or 40 minutes. I want to be very, and I want to make sure there are metrics around what I'm doing that tells me I'm doing the right thing. And so enter Orange Theory and all these others, right? So I think if you look at it from that framework, you can probably discover other opportunities. You know, I've always been a believer if you run a business, you should always be running tests on whatever it is, programming, the customers you're trying to attract, the equipment you buy, the classes you offer. Never, ever, ever be stagnant. Because, I mean, it's one of the great lessons, I think, of biology is that we've evolved because of tests. And we call those tests mutations for the most part, right? So nature throws these things out to see what succeeds. And the things that succeed grow. And I think every business should follow that model. Never, ever, ever be stagnant. I look at Lifetime as a good example right now. I think they've always done that. I've always been a fan of Jeff and Bram. I think they do a great job because they do that, and they're doing that now with GLP-1s. Now you could argue, they're going way overboard. They're hiring MDs and nurses and all this other stuff, but they're all in, and they're going to learn a lot. And who knows? Maybe they're going to spin off little, GLP-1 studios, right? Or you don't know what's going to come of that, but they're going to learn a lot. You can certainly sit back and watch this, but I think even small businesses should always be looking at new things to experiment with to try and improve their business.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. You mentioned Lifetime and the hiring nurses and that kind of stuff. Like, what are your thoughts about the integration between traditional health and fitness and healthcare?
Oh, I think those lines are kind of coming together for sure. Yeah. And back to our discussion around Gen X and my generation, baby boom, I think it helps if those lines are less blurred. I mean, as you progress in your life, I mean, you want to make sure what you're doing is medically sound. So that can be as part of a Medi-Fitness kind of program, or it can be that you've been approved by some body that you follow certain criteria, whatever they are. But I think there's no doubt that these things are coming together.
It seems like an obvious thing, and it's strange that it hasn't sooner. In England, you go to the doctor and they'll tell you to go and do some exercise or go and have a walk or whatever. But obviously people need some more specific guidance on all of those things, whether it's what you eat and how you train. And maybe because of some of these more medical based drugs or interventions where you kind of have to, there's a need for more of a closer handoff to some of that stuff. Maybe that naturally brings this together and creates a whole new segment, because outside of a few of these kind of health medical type of boutique places, it's not really been that common, has it?
No.
To see those.
No. And you have to remember, you go to medical school. I don't know what it's like in the UK, and I mean certainly I didn't go to medical school here either. But I don't think there's a single exercise physiology class taught. I mean, it's all about crisis. It's all about fixing. Like medical school is fixing, whereas fitness is prevention. And so while it sounds great, hey, we'll bring the medical. In a lot of cases, they don't know as much as a personal trainer knows. Seriously, right? So at a minimum, maybe it provides a nice aura around what you're doing. So you're involved with a hospital, let's say. And maybe it's actually attached to the hospital. There's a Gary Reedy back in New Jersey has several of these where he has partnerships with big hospitals, one in Princeton, for instance. And the fitness center is literally attached to it, but it's run completely by Gary and his staff, but it has the halo of the hospital. And they tend to draw a little bit older clientele, but not all older, very, I'd say on the young side, not that many, but Gen X, baby boom? Yes. So, yeah, I think that is an opportunity, but I would caution that the knowledge on the medical side isn't there today. I don't think.
With the size of the opportunity, I was wondering whether you've had your number crunchers look at this, but if you look at the number I said earlier, 173 billion going to obesity in the US, I wonder how much that costs per person, and whether what the balance is if someone was on GLP-1 with a gym membership, which one works out more cost effective? Could you imagine what that is likely to be? Could you?
When you're saying you look at the cost of GLP-1s.
Cost of GLP-1s and a membership to a gym or with a trainer compared to how much we're currently spending on obesity. Is it going to be cheaper for the insurance companies and NHS in England to get people on that than the methods they're using currently?
Yeah, well, that's math, right? And it's math in its time, because until you have somebody on GLP-1s for for life, let's say, and this is a study they should be doing, right? So let's follow people that are on GLP-1s, let's follow people that aren't, and over time, and see what those costs are. The one input would be, what did you pay for GLP-1s, or what did the state or government pay for GLP-1s, and what did we save over time compared to the person who didn't take GLP-1s? What did they cost that we didn't? So it's basic math, but the only way we can calculate that is over time. Otherwise, it's sheer conjecture. You can make suppositions, like we talked earlier. Once you get this off patent and those input costs go way down, to me that gets to the point where it's probably a no-brainer at that point. Right now it's a head scratcher. Okay, it's $1,000 a month and all that. But boy, if it goes down to it's $200 a year for this, you're going to see everybody's going to be on GLP-1s. I was watching the news this morning. They're literally talking about approving drugs for 12-year-old obese, GLP-1s for 12-year-old obese kids, right? Because you want to get on that earlier in life. And I'm in favor of that. Some people say, well, they're only 12-year-old, they're adolescents, et cetera. But as long as there aren't any long-term side effects, negative side effects of GLP-1s, I think the sooner you jump on the obesity problem, the better off you're going to be. Because again, as you talked about, it's behavioral change. It's a lot harder to change behavior when you're 40 than it is when you're 12.
It's a tough one when it goes down to kids, because it's like, well,
yeah.
How do they get it? Shouldn't really be in that position that early on. Unfortunately, they are, but.
Well, it's back to what we talked about.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot of it's socioeconomically driven, and what the food they're eating and all of that.
Maybe they should put a percentage back into education and.
Well, I think they should be bringing gyms back into the gym class.
Yeah.
Back into the school. We should be teaching kids what I call the joy of movement. I think all of us in the fitness industry did something that gave us this joy of this incredible gift we've been given. And I think there's a window you can get that. It's probably between the ages of 7 and 12, or it's in that zip code. And it's harder to get it later in life because you never felt it. You never felt the joy of running around a soccer field or competing in a track meet or playing football or basketball or any of those things, right? You never looked down and said, God gave me this incredible body. I'm going to take care of it. If you don't get there, then it's hard to find that later. It's the truth, in my opinion.
With the things like in England, we have the NHS that's at breaking point, and a lot of the issues that they're dealing with are lifestyle-related issues from what I understand. It's putting a lot of strain on how the whole thing comes together. And then here you have the medical insurance, which seems to be a whole racket in itself. What do you see any positive or negative changes as it relates to things like how the insurance works here, or the cost for medical for people in general?
To clarify, do you mean our system has changed somehow from what it is now? Or?
I guess in England, it is expensive to deal with those issues, which is my guess is the government funds that, and then here it's insurance companies, and it's very expensive to. Insurance is crazy. Like as an English person coming to America, it's hard to get your head around. So do you think there'll be any positive changes either to, maybe improving things like what's going on in England with the NHS to be able to put resources into other things, or to make things like the cost of insurance in America lower?
Okay.
Or do you think they'll just capitalize it and it will continue to go up?
Well, as I stated earlier, I mean, the whole insurance, it's so fragmented here, right? It's not state controlled, but there are some big buckets, and like corporations can be large buckets. I mean, in running Precor, we were self-insured. I mean, we had, 1 year we had Aetna, the other year we had United Healthcare, whatever, but they just administrate. That's all they do. So if you're going to use one of those carriers, let's say it's Aetna, they're going to come in and look at your history. How much have you spent in the last year? What do those claims look like? And they're going to give you a quote. But if you overrun that year, they're going to bump it the next year, or you have to basically make them whole. So all they do is administrate. The good thing about that is there's a level of responsibility on the part of the company, because I'm paying for it, right? So what I want to do is minimize those costs. So damn right I want you on GLP-1s. Damn right we'll pay for that, because it's going to lower our costs. So that could happen. I think you'll see that happen as the efficacy of GLP-1s are proven out over the long term.
And do you think some of these big corporations, like now, a lot of them have pretty sophisticated health fitness centers and things like that.
Right.
Do you see that there could be a combination of partnering up with fitness and a bit like if you look at what Exponential are doing? We had a podcast with them about this Lindora partnership where you've kind of got fitness and you've got weight loss and wellness and administering GLP-1, et cetera. Do you think that there could be these corporate solutions that now look at both?
Absolutely. I mean, you have their acquisition. You have you have Fit On. I don't know if you know Fit On, and they bought. I think it was Peer. Yes, for sure. I mean, that's coming together, and these corporations want more holistic solutions because they realize maybe there are ways to control costs. So I mean, they're bringing in things like like silver sneakers, right? That's actually Medicare, but they're bringing in these other capabilities or offerings that their employees can use, right? So they want to incent healthy behaviors as much as they can. So companies that can deliver like the full menu of health. So that may be mental health, and maybe nutrition. It's exercise. Maybe it's GLP-1. It's all of the above. Corporations are looking for solutions.
I didn't realize that a lot of big companies do that. So, and now I can kind of understand why there's a drive to keep your employees as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive, I guess.
And I think it's an expectation. I mean, the other thing is getting back to demographics, and now you have Gen Zs are coming to the workforce, Gen X, millennials. This is an expectation now of employees. Like, does it come with a gym membership? What else? Do you offer mental health counseling? I mean, all these things where, when at Precor, we never, sorry to say, we never thought of those things.
Do you see, if we look at some of because with everything, like with these drugs, you never really know, even with things like we've seen recently with the pandemic, a lot of stuff comes out afterwards and you're like, oh, okay, we didn't realize about that. Do you see there any potential risks if you are a business and you're now making plans and investments to get involved in this? What are some of the risks that you think you need to be careful about, whether that's regulation that might change, or because you're involved, you're working with businesses, you're making investments, acquisitions, and you're thinking long term. So is that something that you've given any time to?
Well, I think that you want to protect yourself, right? So at a minimum, you want a very, very strong release. I mean, it depends on what situation we're talking about. Let's say it's a gym. You probably have releases now. Anybody that walks in, you get a release of liability. If I'd be shocked if every gym does not do that. You want to make sure through an attorney that something like GLP-1s that are prescribed externally, blah, 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 are covered. Maybe even specifically call them out in the agreement, right? So you want to protect yourself there, because you're right, you don't know. But by the same token, anybody could walk into your gym with any kind of problem. They could be on the verge of triple bypass, and when they drop dead in your gym, right? Are you responsible for that? I don't know. So it really comes down to just the release, I think. I don't think you need to be too concerned about some major lawsuit, because as long as you have, like I said, as long as you have a strong release, you should be in good shape. Doesn't say you wouldn't get sued, but you should be in good shape.
And with regulation, is this something that you think is going to come in a lot more as people like trainers and working with Lifetime are obviously one of the first that are going to be figuring some of these things out. But do you see that there's likely to be more regulation around it as time goes on?
Well, to flip that question just a little bit, you bring up a good point in terms of potential liability, and that might be, is your staff trained adequately for the clientele you have, right? Whether it's GLP-1s or not. If something goes wrong, a good attorney's going to come in and say, well, didn't you guys know how to use the paddles, right, to restart somebody's heart? Do you have regular training in that? Why don't you have regular training in that? And then all of a sudden you're writing a big check because you didn't have training. So I think that's potentially a very, very important area, that you look at training, you look at all the eventualities, and make sure you've got those bases covered.
It seems as though it's the US leading this, and then in the UK, I don't know any other markets, but how do you see this expanding around the world? Have you heard of any other markets that are getting involved in this internationally?
Well, I've got to believe that most affluent, at least, countries, GLP-1s are on the radar. And if they have an obesity crisis, which almost every major country does, that, yes, still embrace it at some level or the other. I'd be surprised if they don't. And, back to your UK example, mostly in Europe, at least, they're mostly run by the government, right? Healthcare. So adaptation can happen pretty rapidly. So yeah, I'd be surprised if it's not at a minimum in discussion now or happening in a lot of those countries.
And what about possible models? There's we mentioned it a couple of times. Lifetime now got this model. Exponential announced this, the Lindora partnership. Weight Watchers. There's one called Remedy Place. Is there any other models that you've seen or heard of that are worth looking at for people that are trying to figure out how to play in this area? No, but they're coming. Really? Stay tuned. Yeah. I think we're in the very early stages of this. Very, very. So there's opportunity. I mean, everybody approaches these things differently as a business owner. Some like to embrace it rapidly and test, as I said earlier, test it. Others like to sit back and see how things unfold. But I would say, at a minimum, be mindful, be aware, study it, be on top of it. You'll know as a business owner when it's time to move, time to act. Yeah. And then online, are you seeing any interesting virtual online models of this as well, where they're combining the coaching, the delivery of or not delivery, but providing with the product and support? No, nobody, not yet. It'd probably be something that you would kind of think would suit if you could get access to it, because I know they do it in tablets as well now, so you can almost... Yeah, the tablets, I think that's I'm trying to remember the name of it, begins with an R, but Rybelsus. Yeah. But there are no GLP-1s that are tablet form that are approved for weight loss. Yeah, Rybelsus is for... That's about to come, I think, isn't it? Yeah, and it's prescribed off-label too, right? So, but Rybelsus is the only one. Right. Yeah. So what sort of stuff are you working on at the moment then, Paul? You've got, what have you got going on in my life?
Well, you on the business side, right, is what we want to talk about. Yeah.
Outside of bears coming into your garden and stuff like that.
I meant to show you that picture. I have it with me. The biggest black bear, certainly in Redmond, Washington, has frequented our koi pond more than once. Well, I'm working at Harrison Co. Obviously, it's not been the best year for M&A. We've closed some deals, but there are headwinds with certainly with interest rates, and a lot of companies just aren't showing the numbers you'd like to see, in terms of go to market. But I'd say in our industry, there are some companies doing well out there in certain niches that are clients of ours that we anticipate going to market next year with. So that's good. But yeah, it's from an economic point of view, I think there've been mostly headwinds in the market. But we'll get through this. It's the natural ebb and flow of things.
And you've seen a lot of those ebbs and flows as well. What's your prediction about how long are we going to be in for this, and what are some of the things that what are some of the businesses or models that you're seeing are going to be leading the pack as we come out, in terms of what are they doing or setting themselves up to do?
Yeah, I think we're still on a COVID hangover, and I think part of the interest rate thing is a COVID hangover. We just spent a lot of money to make sure things didn't implode, and here we are. We've got 8-7% interest rates. I'm a bull long term. I just think we need to get through this, and I think the COVID hangover is going to last. We were talking earlier about gyms looking out to 2026. I think the home industry, the pull forward in home equipment was massive. I think that's probably out to 2026 before that returns. So I think it's going to be a slow, steady rise out of this. But we bottomed out, and we're going to come out of it. And again, back to demographics, you've got Gen Z's a huge generation. Millennials, they're both big generations that consume health and fitness probably at a higher percentage than even the baby boomers. So I think, the fundamental driver, which is people wanting to stay healthy and fit, that is there, it's in place, it's strong. It's just, how do you deliver it? Where do you play in that whole landscape in terms of your business? But the primary driver being the customers, it's there, it's solid. I don't see that going away. I see it improving. Hey, by the way, you asked online GLP-1s. So that's what Sequence does, owned by Weight Watchers, right? So that's all. That's all online. Yes, you can GLP-1s. They'll give you guidance, but to my knowledge, they don't have actually brick and mortar stores. They may, but not to my knowledge.
Right. And if people want to get a hold of this report, where can they get it? Where do we need to go?
They just need to go to harrisonco.com,
and we'll put those links in there.
And the reports. The reports are right there for you to download.
It's free report.
Free report.
Wonderful.
It's a slight commission to me, but
excellent.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Paul.
Matthew,
appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.